Hello and welcome to Men in Progress, the podcast of United Methodist Men of Treach. This is part of the Life Plus God podcast series from Treach Memorial United Methodist Church. I'm Dave Casey. I'm a longtime member here at Treach and in the men's group here. And I think what we try to do with this podcast is just talk about issues that are important to men, and some of them are just general issues. They're not necessarily limited to men. And just what it means to live out our faith and to grow our relationship with Jesus Christ. And sometimes it's lighthearted, sometimes it's a little deeper. And this one tonight is probably going to be in that range. We're going to talk about forgiveness, and that is something that usually is tough for people to do. I think it's sometimes particularly tough for men to do as well. So I've got three guys here to help me answer these questions. Why is it so hard to forgive? So I've got Paul Beck, longtime member of Treach, Michael Tuggle, who's you may not know is a producer of this broadcast, and Mike Campbell, another long-term member of here at Treach. So guys, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah,
nice to be here.
Good to see you guys. So I'm going to dive in here, and I'm going to start with Paul since he's so shy and retiring. Why is it so hard to forgive people?
You know, we were told not to prepare, that we're just going to talk.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah. And that's hard to do when you know you're going to have to say something out loud that people are going to hear you say. And, I thought a little bit about that in terms of...
So you're not going to forgive me for...
No, I will forgive you,
okay,
Dave, many times over. But, for me, as I thought about this... certainly as a man, I know that's dangerous territory, but as a man, we're not very good at forgiving others. Nobody's supposed to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a given. I'm nice to everybody. Ask Mike, he'll tell you. I'm nice to everybody, and I'm a get along kind of guy, But I can tell you that as I have grown older, and I believe deeper in my faith, I think I've gotten better at this.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've had a couple of instances in my life where I've had to forgive.
Mm-hmm. So it's not easier, but you're getting better at it. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Super.
It's kind of like being a Christian.
Yeah.
The more you try, the more you do it. Ask Mike Campbell.
Yeah.
Those baseball players, those kids that hit the home runs. They didn't hit them the first time they went up to bat,
mm-hmm.
but they practiced and they practiced and they practiced and they listened to Mike, mm-hmm. and he fine-tuned their swing, and they got better at it. Same with forgiveness.
Yeah. So Mike, speaking of that, do you find it hard to forgive?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. Sometimes I have in the profession that I've been in.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching football and baseball over the years, and having to deal with umpires and officials and
parents
in football and parents. There are times where it is hard to do. However, I've done it, and even an administrator or two, for that matter. I think there's probably really, though, only one person that I haven't fully forgiven yet in my life. I've forgiven everybody else,
mm-hmm.
but there's one guy that just hurt a lot of people, not just me specifically.
Yep.
It was a lot of people, and so it was hard to forgive him. Fortunately, I haven't seen him in years.
That makes it a little easier.
That makes it easier.
Yeah.
But I'm just being honest.
Yeah. No, I think for most of us, there's probably one or two over the years that it's really hard. You can try
mm-hmm.
and try, and it's hard to forgive. So, Michael, when you have forgiven someone.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about that afterward?
I think it always feels better once you've forgiven somebody. I think it's as much for yourself as it is for them in a lot of ways. I think the build up is so much worse than the actual wrong that was done. I mean, after you're wrong, it's the stewing about it and the thinking about it and the I'm angry and frustrated and hurt and all the other. It's all of that just kind of stewing in the frustration that is so much worse than what was ever said or done usually. And the whole forgiveness part of it, it just kind of puts a button on it and is like, it's finally done, and I feel better. about what was done to me, but also feel better about the relationship usually with the person. And I don't know.
Yeah, and I know that when we forgive, I think the tendency, you've got to think, well, they wronged me, but I have to forgive them, and but they still wrong me, right? And you're not changing the fact that what they did, that doesn't go away.
I think part of it, to put another part to what you asked, I think part of it too is that we don't have to forgive them. That's part of it. We don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we absolutely have the freedom to not forgive somebody.
Yep.
But I think the action of forgiving somebody is the part that is the healing part.
Yeah, definitely for us.
Yeah, and see, I would take exception to that. What did Jesus tell us?
Well,
He was real adamant.
it's kind of there in the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah,
Right.
He was real adamant that we are to
We are
forgive.
to
Now,
forgive. And we're to ask for forgiveness as well.
And Michael, I get it. I mean, it's hard. I'm just kind of curious, and I don't have the script, so I'm just kind of curious whether or not we're going to get around to the other F word, the forget.
Yeah.
Because that's one. As Mike Campbell just said, he's got this one guy.
Yeah, you're not
He hasn't
forget.
He has not forgotten this guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would suggest that not forgetting is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think once you forgive, Michael, as you've said, you can go on with your life. And sometimes I think as we forgive somebody, but don't forget what the situation was, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah.
Because it hurt. Like Mike said, it hurt not only him but other people.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the opportunity to say, you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we're sitting around a table as 4 Christian men discussing this. When I was saying we don't have to forgive, I'm thinking more kind of, generally like there are a lot of people that are not driven by that same kind of lesson or teaching from Christ that we have to forgive because that's what we're called to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, even though we're called, we don't have to do it anyway. I mean, we're called to do a lot of things we probably don't do that we should. But there are a lot of people that frankly don't even, that's not even on their radar.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and Mike, I'll ask you this: what do you have to do in turn? What's the process you go through to forgive someone?
I had something on my mind, so
Go
I'll
ahead.
answer that question in a second. But
Yeah.
Scripturally, I know we are to forgive because our sins are not forgiven unless we forgive others.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And so Dave asked me that question again.
Well, I'm just saying, what's the process that you go
Process?
through? Yeah. Because
To forgive?
Yeah. Because it's not, to me, it's not a instant deal.
It is not.
No.
No, you're
It is a
correct.
process.
Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you've just got to man up, cowboy up, whatever you want to call it, whatever we called it, and you've got to just go say, hey, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Sometimes you expect them to do the same thing because it might have involved part of that. Could have been them as well.
Yep. Goes either way.
And it's just, I believe it's just what we're supposed to do is to be able to forgive. And I know one thing, in almost 50 years of marriage with my wife, we got mad at each other, yes, but we forgave each other pretty darn quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't last time.
Yeah.
It just didn't.
And that kind of goes to what I was talking to Michael about, is that kind of relief after you forgive someone.
Yes.
And then it's kind of a burden lifted, and okay, we're moving on.
Right.
And I grew up in the Northeast, and our town was kind of equally divided between Irish, Italians, Polish, and all else. And the Italians are known for being really emotional. And boy, when they were having an argument, you could hear it 3 doors down, right? But when it's over, it's over. The most loving families, that we had in the town were Italian. But when they were in an argument, it was pretty vocal and pretty loud. And I'm not that way. And sometimes I think it would help me if I was, because I tend to hold stuff in when, if you release it and get past it, I think you're better off in many ways. So a couple of things with forgiveness that, I think maybe they're misconceptions. And I'm just going to throw a couple of these out there and ask. I want to start with Mr. Tuggle on this. Consequences. So many times somebody might wrong us. We're called to forgive them, but they haven't suffered any consequences of their action, right? They've just gone on and, life continues. Does that make it harder for you?
Yeah, of course. I think that's part of why this is so difficult. And I'll just say for me, I do think we're kind of hardwired for justice of some sort and for things to even out a bit in terms of fairness. I think we want things to be fair, and I think when we're wronged, it doesn't seem fair. And on the other side of that, if I don't sense any contrition on the part of the other party involved, that makes it even harder. Because at least if they say, you know what, I screwed up too, I said things I shouldn't, I did something I shouldn't, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry too. It's over. It's quick, right?
Yeah. Makes it easier. Yeah.
But if they're like, no, I didn't do anything wrong to you, I don't know what I don't know what your problem is. That's a lot harder, I think, to just kind of suck it up on your end and go, well, I'm going to be the bigger person, and I forgive you for whatever you did. You want to forgive me, whatever, fine. But I think that's a lot harder.
Yeah. It's hard to be sincere about that when you still feel it inside.
It is.
You
But again, I think it's probably healthier and certainly more Christ-like to do it that way, but not easy.
The other thing, and Mike, I'll ask you this because you kind of alluded to it in your earlier one. When you forgive somebody, I think the tendency is that sometimes we feel like, well, we're kind of lessening whatever they did to us when we forgive them. But I think the true thing is we're not denying something wrong happened.
Right.
We're just, for our own peace of mind, I think, we're trying to forgive them. Is that
right?
Is that the way you look at it, or is it?
Yes,
yeah,
I do, and I've said this jokingly for years, but I know where I'm going when I leave this earth, and I've always said, because of being where I was and what I was doing, that I thought God was going to give me 29, 30 good days a month in heaven, and one day a month I was going to have to go to a room with umpires and football officials and try to make friends with them.
You're just assuming that they're going to make it to heaven. That's
I'm assuming.
That's a big assumption in some cases.
In a separate room.
Yeah. Well, that might not be heaven for them to be back in the room with you. You never know.
I don't know. You never know.
I don't know. That's biblical, right? The mansion has many rooms. One of them's bound to be for the umpires.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a good one. Paul, I'm going to ask you this one. I'll see what you make of this. When you forgive someone, do you see that as a start of a healing process?
Well, you've struck a nerve. When it's in your own family, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from experience that situation in my life today is better than I could have ever imagined.
Great. That's a good outcome.
Yeah.
That's a great outcome.
Yeah.
A great outcome. So now I'm going to kind of switch things around a little bit because we've been talking about forgiving others for the most part. But we ourselves, I think, ask for forgiveness at least I do, on a very regular basis. So I'm going to ask Mr. Tuggle here, can you think of a time when you really didn't deserve forgiveness, but you got it anyway?
I have to limit that to once.
Well, maybe the most recent, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that that's not every day, but it's probably more often than I would like. Whether it is tone of voice, whether it is, I thought I was saying something funny that nobody else thought was humorous, and they took it a little bit more of to offense or whatever.
I'm extraordinarily guilty of that.
Right. I have a big one with tone of voice. I mean, I'm not a quiet person anyway, so I tend to be fairly loud, and I will say things in a way that I don't hear it in my head the way it comes out, but it's certainly received as what is that? Where's that coming from? So yeah, I receive grace from. Certainly Ginger. I mean, my wife certainly gives me grace on many occasions, as do my kids and family and friends. And So I would. That's a long answer, but yes, often.
Cool. So I keep coming up with tough ones for Mike, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness after the podcast.
He's got broad shoulders, I'll tell you.
Mike, have you ever put, and this is it may be hard to get a specific instance of this, but have you ever put conditions on forgiveness in the past?
I can't think of anything specific lately, but yes, earlier in my life, used to do this, used to do that. I think over time, as you grow as a Christian and you grow in your faith, you understand there can't be conditions because Christ has no conditions.
I was going to say, he set a really good example for us.
He set a good example. There were no conditions, and I think maturity level as a Christian has a lot to do with that condition thing. And I know that I've done that, but I don't know that I've done it lately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way. I think that certainly when I was a kid, it was always kind of quid pro quo. If you, all right, I'm going to forgive you if you forgive me, but not until you do. That kind of deal. So Mr. Beck's been quiet over there, so we're going to toss him something so he can.
That's a rarity.
Chew on. Yeah, I know. Well, I think maybe his mic's muted. I'm not really positive, but so. God gives us a lot of examples to be like Him, to follow what Mike was just saying. Where would you rank the ability to forgive in those things?
I didn't think you'd ever ask the question.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking about as I was preparing, not preparing, but as I was thinking. Okay, I don't want anybody to think I prepared. But when you stop and think,
cheating in any way.
No. But when you stop and think about everything that Jesus did, He preached, He healed, He prophesied. But what was kind of the last big thing that Jesus did before He died on the cross?
Forgave.
This was my question.
I know. Well, I know I was answering.
I knew he. Hey,
you threw the line out.
I know.
Yeah.
What did He say? Forgive them.
Well, there's another half of that. They know not what they do. Yeah.
And I think He was. Yeah. I think He was being kind.
Yeah.
I think they did know what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. They know what they do directly to Him. Yeah. I don't think they understood the implications of everything.
That they were crucifying the Christ. Yeah.
But
I mean, when you stop and think about it, I'm a keep it simple, stupid kind of guy. And ask any of my Sunday school class members, they'll back that up. But I like to keep it simple. And if Jesus was willing to forgive in that situation, how can we not forgive pretty much anything and everything that we will ever go through in our lives?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think back, I've had it pretty easy in my life. I've had a few instances where maybe I felt like I was treated unfairly or somebody did something and may not even known that they did anything to bug me, to hurt me, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it. I haven't had anything dramatic happen, right? But there's a movie that came out a few years ago that Chris Dunham was involved in the production of. And I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but it was about Graham Staines, who was he was an Australian missionary to India, and spent a year there, built an orphanage, worked with lepers, did all kinds of really positive things, was well regarded by a large segment of the Indian population, but there were some people that were against him that thought that he was trying to convert Hindus to Christianity, and that's wrong. In India, that's a crime. And so essentially what happened was he was ambushed. He and his two sons were killed in a very brutal way. And when his wife heard of this and it was confirmed what happened, the very first line she uttered was, "I don't know who did this, but I forgive them."
Mm.
And to me, that's the ultimate, epitome of forgiveness. I mean, I've never been called to do that or to been in that position. Can't imagine what it would be like. But for her to have that strength of faith to make that comment was very, very powerful. It was a great movie to see if you can catch it. It had actually Stephen Baldwin starred in it, Alec Baldwin's younger brother, who's totally unlike Alec. So we won't get into that. But so anyway, just a couple more things, and we're going to close this. Do any of you struggle? And I'll just throw this out, and you guys can all chip in or whoever. But do any of you struggle that God has this infinite capacity to forgive, no matter what we do as men or as humans, that He has the capacity to forgive us?
Absolutely not. He made it real clear that He would forgive us. Jesus died on the cross for all of our sins. I mean, plain and simple. Once again, back to the simple thing. But
even the sins that hadn't occurred yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And what a blessing that is. I think I'm hoping you're not going to say, how many sins did I commit today?
I've only got 4 sheets of paper.
Yeah, that's right. But it's just so amazing of the forgiveness that Christ has.
Yeah.
And, as we all know, Christ is our model. And as we all know, none of us will ever measure up to Christ. But just knowing that we can aspire, and that each day maybe we can get a little better and do a little better, each and every day. That's really, for me, that's my goal.
Yeah.
So
I think it's almost the unlocking move to becoming a Christian to me is finally understanding and believing that that's possible. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember, if you have talks with people, it's like, well, explain this to me, how this works. And you explain it to them. It's like, your sins are forgiven. They're like, I don't get it. I don't what do you mean? And it's like, well, they're just, they're forgiven as far as, one side of the, I don't get it. Explain it to me again. And but once you have that understanding and that belief that, it's all taken away. Right. I remember years ago in a stand-up, Dennis Miller called it ecclesiastical whiteout. It was like, you just, it's like, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that.
Yeah. The clean slate.
I can't believe that that's possible or that that's true. Yeah. But the second you allow yourself to believe, what, God is that all powerful, and He is that forgiving, then I think that's when faith really begins.
Key word.
Yes.
Yeah. Faith.
Key word.
Mike, any last thoughts on it?
No, I agree with what Michael and Paul have said. I mean, I know it's difficult for people to believe that God has done what He has done, and that all these sins are whitewashed away, but they are, and it's an amazing gift that many, like Michael said, do not understand.
Yeah.
We've just got to pray that they do. And that we live the kind of lives that we need to live as examples, so that they understand that.
That's the strongest way, I think, to bring people, to the faith, is just to show it. And certainly,
it's not so much what you say; it's what you do.
People watch you.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Particularly if you profess to be a Christian.
Yes, exactly.
Do that. That's why I don't have a little fish on the back of my car, because the way I drive, I don't want to be implicated.
No, and I've noticed many that do. They don't have very good drivers.
Got to watch that.
Yeah.
Well, so there you have it. Episode 5 of Men in Progress. We hope you were blessed in some way by our discussion, and you'll join us next time. I really need to thank my brothers from Treach, Paul Beck, Michael Tuggle, Mike Campbell. What a great discussion, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And certainly the church production team for helping to put together each of these podcasts. As Proverbs says, iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. And that's the whole plan that we have with this podcast series. We hope you join us again in the future. We're just Christian men trying to be better dads, better husbands, better leaders, and better men. I'm Dave Casey, and we'll see you next time.
This episode of the Men in Progress podcast is sponsored by Treach Memorial United Methodist Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in or near Flower Mound, Texas on any Sunday morning, we would love to welcome you to any of our Treach services at 8, 9, and 11. Or you can follow our services anytime on our Facebook page at tmumc.org.